another episode on A Podcast. Your host, Stephen Maxted. And today we have great energy, David Siena, now consultant. I know that we were just talking before getting on here, David, but we actually met as mutual team leaders in a prior role in the real estate industry. And it's exciting to hear that you are kind of heading, in a growth pattern yourself, as you always were encouraging others to do. When we were working together at that time, just to reference and date stamp that out loud here.
Like 4 years later, right? We got to finally reconnect.
Yes, it's crazy how time flies. I had a moment earlier today, and it was like, actually, that's been 3 years in another discussion, and I'm like, whoa! I was like, that's crazy. But when you're busy and growing, it's great to reconnect. And been always a fan of your energy, and thanks for making time for being on the episode today. With us here, and I'm looking forward to chatting about what you're helping folks out with today, how you're doing, and what's looking down, in the future for you, and how you're having an impact on people. So, Dave, why don't you introduce yourself maybe a little bit more here than what I did? I probably didn't do justice to all the things that you are doing, but give a little insight.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you the 30,000 foot overview, obviously, of it. But essentially, my name's David Siena. I've been in the high ticket sales, specifically the real estate industry, for roughly 5 years now. I have a history and a background in running real estate brokerages. Very recently, I helped run a brokerage. I was a team leader at a brokerage in Scottsdale, Arizona, that closed, roughly 10,000 transactions per year. In addition, I'm, been a part of teams that do upwards of 1.2 billion a year, which is obviously pretty exciting as well. And extremely recently, as of 23 days ago, I've actually went completely independent, and I'm now doing full-time consulting specifically for individuals in the sales world. The majority of my clients obviously are broker owners, if not like real estate agents, mortgage, individuals, etc. But that's really what I'm doing right now after 5 years of running brokerages through KW.
Awesome. Killer recap. Was expecting nothing less.
It's quick, it's sexy. I'm like, we don't need to get into the nitty gritty. It's just that's what it is, right?
Yeah. What something right away. You mentioned kind of like that the B in business for the billion side of things going on there. And what's a big difference when you work with folks in those like teams from like that level of performance to someone who's just starting? And it's no knocking of anyone, just like what are the patterns and things that you notice within those high performing teams and things that you've worked on?
I think the biggest thing, because obviously I was in Canada for like the majority of my life, specifically being a team leader within Keller Williams for 4 years there. One of the things I saw and I noticed was obviously the mindset of these individuals, but specifically how they were leading. So, for example, if you look at like Andre Chin is a really good example of it. Andre Chin is one of the best leaders that I've ever seen in my life because he's got a very solid mindset. But in addition to that, he's able to lead and drive others. Whether it's in Canada or in Arizona, you are seeing very similar patterns like the ones Andre had, for example. So if you look at, the individuals I was in business with in Arizona, the winners in Arizona had that same mindset. They were able to drive others around them, and they're really able to add additional layers of leverage. Obviously, I think that specifically in Canada, obviously the market is so much smaller that the B word and the billion word, it's obviously a lot harder to get to. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of other teams that are able to do that. We were just able to see it so much more frequently, I think, because of the population realistically in the States. So I don't know if there's a big differentiating factor between the mindsets of some of the leaders I'm in like relationship with in Canada versus in the States. But I think it's obviously the one pattern that we do see is obviously the grit and the drive, in addition to the level of talent that's around those individuals.
Awesome. And when you say mindset, I know that a lot of folks like talk about this, and I'm sure it's heavy on your algorithm, as it is on mine. And just folks that are trying to like be high performers and like really get to that next level, like what are the actions that are being taken there? Like what can we say to folks that are like, hey, like routine stuff, what is the difference there between high performers?
I think the first item that really comes to mind, and it's funny because I was talking to Andre about this a little bit earlier today, actually, and the one mindset that really comes into play is the fact that pressure is a privilege, right? That's the very first thing that I think about. But in addition to that, almost the mindset that you should be terrified of obscurity. So, and what I mean by that, obscurity is defined as, not being well known. So when you look at these performers that are doing, like, for example, our office did 10,000 transactions last year, and I think it was around 6 billion in volume. You don't hear that very often from a real estate brokerage perspective. But when you dig a little bit deeper into that, it's like obscurity was the biggest thing I was terrified about, especially being in a market where nobody knew my name. Right. So
Right.
if you look at that, you look at the fact that obscurity is defined as by individuals not really knowing you or your product. I think that the great sales leaders in our ecosystem are aware that you need to be able to take massive action to the extent that everybody knows who you are. So I think from an actionability standpoint, obviously it all starts off with mindset. But in addition to that, it's like, what are you doing to ensure that every single person knows your name and at least knows the value that you're able to provide consistently?
Awesome. Okay, couple of things to unpack on that end of things. What would you recommend to people, or what do you see them doing to get in front of those folks to be
So
not behind the
well,
scenes?
I was gonna say, kind of, it really depends on what you have to play with, or what your goal is specifically. Like, I know, for example, I'm coaching a variety of realtors, loan officers, individuals, just in different the ecosystem of real estate. And I can understand that a brokerage leader or a broker owner is going to have to do dramatically different activities and actionable items than a real estate agent. I know for a fact, though, if you were to look at the actual actionable steps to take, I can understand that is every single person in your world hearing from you at least 2 to 3 times per week. Like, that's really a metric that I've been able to take with me, whether it's whether I'm coaching a broker owner, whether I'm coaching a real estate agent. Is your database and is this your sphere of influence, and the people that know, like, and trust you, or have just even heard your name, are they hearing from you over 100 to 120 times per year? Because that's kind of that's really what it takes. And the analogy that I like, where I got the idea from, is thinking about Amazon, right? I'm
Yeah.
sure if you're like me, Amazon talks to me at least. I have to clarify.
Yes, I know. Sorry, I'm a child.
You understand what I'm saying because you're in marketing, but at the same point in time,
Yes.
they contact me and reach out to
Yeah.
me at least a couple times a day. So why would it be any different from us and the way we conduct our businesses? And that's something I've been seeing, whether you're in mortgages or, whether you're an agent or whether you're running a brokerage. Does every single person know who you are?
Really good point too. I mean, yeah, even a personal example, I reached out to a buddy of mine who's in a space related to our marketing company. I was just catching up with him though. And then he literally said the words out loud. He's like, "Oh man, we just hired a marketing company and it wasn't you." I lived the experience of, oh my gosh, like, why didn't we stay in touch better recently? That's okay. We're doing all right. And they're doing all right too. They're
You'll get him whenever he's upset with his marketing company. You can
right.
slide right back in. So
Yeah. And that's okay. Maybe there's another relationship there too, and they're in good hands by the sounds of things. I'm happy, they're happy. But to the
absolutely.
point of other folks trying to grow their business, and when we're saying touch points just for folks, I know I'll probably lean more towards thinking like, okay, social media marketing and stuff like this, getting in front of folks that way. But what are other ways that folks are doing that? Because like Amazon, I think of the emails that I get right away, right? That's what I was thinking about. Maybe you were too.
Yeah.
But like it's a mix of things, right? It's not just the social every day. It's like the email, maybe you are doing a bus mention. I'm not a big advocate of those all the time, but maybe it makes sense, but all these different things. But what would you consider a touch point for that? Is it someone opening something up, or is it the soft touch point? Like where do we define that 2 to 3 a week?
So kind of like I mentioned before, it depends what industry we're in. But if I was looking at it generally, like, I understand that if I'm looking at I'm sure that there's going to be more like, actual realtor, mortgage agents listening to this. So I think this will provide a lot more value than the typical brokerage owner. But I know, for example, that if we're looking at the way to run our databases and just grow that database consistently and, get additional referrals from it, I understand that, that individual, like any of my clients, are sending out, at a very minimum, they're sending out maybe a weekly email, depending on the client specifically and where the client's at throughout their home buying process. I know that's at a very minimum where they're sending out a weekly email. So just there alone, that's
Yeah.
these 2 contacts. Adding on to that, I can also understand that there's going to be a quarterly check-in right? Where every single person gets a call in their database at least once every 3 months. That's really the bare minimum, obviously. I'm sure you can talk about the automated text messages, the birthday cards, the Christmas, all that other fun stuff. I think that
Yeah.
the one thing that I've seen done at a really high level, specifically through the Kristen Cole network that I'm, was in business with in Arizona, they were running a monthly event for every single person in their database. And when you do the math on that specifically, for every single event, every single person essentially in some way, shape, or form gets invited to that event on like really 4 to 6 times per month, just on that event alone. So when you talk about, and her team is doing, I think last year did 2,600 transactions, 1.2 billion in volume across the states. So just to put in perspective, that's one of the key, and I'm not going to give away all their secrets, but obviously
No,
that was
yeah,
one
yeah.
of their key, that was one of their key items that they ran, were the consistent events, so they could essentially grow their database. Like, hey, who else wants a
Right.
pie, for example, or who else wants to be entered into
Yeah,
this referral giveaway contest, right? There's the
for sure.
marketing aspect from that was brilliant. Because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, and you got to figure too, from a social media perspective, I've been a lot more active on social media, but I can guarantee you 90% of the money I've made have been through, the emails, they've come through the text messages, and they've come through everything else other than social media, funny enough. So
Yeah, and you know what? It's a weird thing. I'm just gonna kind of collaborate and maybe open up about some of the stuff that we do on the business side of our, podcast production, what we do with marketing with clients on the fractional side. But at the end of the day, like the one-on-one coffee, dinner, lunch, whatever it is, it's not to make like that as being the fuss, but the taking time, getting to know them is where the stuff is closed. But it's necessary almost to have, like you were saying, like those touch points going out there. And the event thing is interesting. The giveaway thing, I totally get it too. Like there's huge opportunity. And um, if someone's listening right now to this, 12-minute mark stamp, but the something I've heard a little while ago, and I know you're into fitness and as am I, pretty active, but even giving away all the secrets to whatever your thing is, because there's so many folks talking about how to get abs online, yet not many people will take action. Like I had someone bring this up to me recently, and I'm like, and we're actually kind of shifting gears a little bit, even what we do with the marketing side, to just kind of like share all insights, like no more secrets, because someone's still got to go do it, and the lack of inactivity on those things is so real. Because I totally get where you're coming from. Like community hosting events, so powerful, especially when you're creating that community around whatever you're doing, and people love to have something to be invited to. It's hard for some folks to say no, and I mean, and hopefully there's value they're providing at the event, like really hopefully, otherwise people will stop showing up. But I think those community events are becoming quite popular. It's nice to have smaller events to go to. You get to hear more things like more intimately from whoever's presenting for whatever reason. And, it's a funny thing that, we mentioned the Amazon side, and we're kind of touching like real estate in general, but it's a pretty big purchase decision. You think that there'd be more attention focused on that versus something that you're getting all this stuff from, buying whatever. I bought some goggles from Amazon recently, I swim. But yeah, I'm definitely not taking that off my thing. But how unimportant is that email to me? Probably very little importance to that. But when it comes time to renew a mortgage or buy another property, whatever it is, if it is in the real estate thing, I should really have a sharpened tool set, like ready to go as the person, buying the thing. I'm still going to rely on the realtor to help with that situation, but I should try to go into those things, right? And it's like, yeah. So good. Like hopefully they keep doing
When
them.
you look at and it's funny you mentioned the little $2 goggles or the $20 goggles, because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, when you look at, like, I just and I don't know if you saw this, I'm constantly posting stuff on my social media and on my YouTube page, obviously, that's just for free, obviously, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
I mean, I just had a client book 5 appointments today, and as you know, that's $90,000 in potential commission. It's
Yeah.
like, that's from cold lead generation, and I guarantee there's even more income in that database that they're not touching at all yet.
Absolutely.
This is a day one client. So when you look at Amazon doing something for $20 goggles, why aren't we doing this with a
Yeah.
potential like $1 million home, depending where you are in the world, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're thinking about that effort in, well, real estate or transfer to other industries or businesses, services, products. Like, yeah, why are you not being out there and being loud? What did I see this recently? I think it was this week actually, where LinkedIn, I'll say, is the reference point for this one. And sorry, whoever this is that posted it, I'll think about it later. I'll put it in the write up. It was like, when was the last time that you did something so bold? It was or like something that was just like bold and out there for your brand or business. And it for whatever reason, it stuck with me. I'm always thinking of stuff like that, but I'm sometimes it's inactionable on my end where I'm like, I don't know. I'll just like delay a little bit. Like whether it be looking to hire like a mascot to do an event, something, unique where you're going to stick out, and testing that A and B testing to a whole new level, not just like a meta ad,
Yeah.
but something weird that like, is it going to attract attention? What are we doing for a giveaway coming up? But there's only one way to know, and it's by taking action and doing it. And no one's really going to remember 5 weeks later what you did, unless it was like illegal or something. And I'm not saying that. Don't do anything stupid, but like do something fun with it, and have fun with growing your business, and be memorable, right? You're always trying to be top of mind. And I'm sure that's what you're, teaching your folks there for like 5. That's great. Whoever did that.
I
Was that
know.
all in your
Day one, literally all on the phones, all colds. So
good for them.
a lot of money. Like it's crazy how, and I posted it on my Instagram story. I don't know if you saw that, but some of the people that are outside of the sales industry are going to be thinking, really, $90,000 in one day? You're probably a little bit full of it, but I'm like, you don't need to believe me. If you're in the industry, you already know.
Right. Well, okay. Could we reverse the math on that to explain this in like a basic level for someone who may
I
not
think
be like,
so in the area that they were cold calling, the average home commission was roughly $18,000.
okay.
If I did my math correctly, 18 times 5 should be 90K. if my math is correct on that. So reversing the math from that, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, exactly. And so then potential, intake from that, and then the horizon for that. I mean, cold call now, and then I don't know if they're buyers or sellers, but how far out is that income like then hitting them? Because they're not landing that like the sale the day of, right? It's like they
Yeah,
will get that in the future.
absolutely. Like for a real estate transaction, I believe like by the time you cold call an individual, on average, you're going to close that deal within, depending on how warm that lead is, it's at a very minimum, in this market, maybe 45 to 90 days conservatively.
Right.
So
yeah,
it's not bad. It's not bad. It's 2025 business. It's next year's business right now.
Isn't that that's interesting to unpack, and I totally get it too. For folks
2025, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's probably when it's going to close for this individual, and then
100%.
then they're already forecasting and doing it differently that way.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So that's cold calling. I guess just calling in general though is like very fair. I know that I got off my keister on Monday and Tuesday this week. Now we're on Wednesday when we record here, but just doing follow-up calls. I'm kind of weird, in my mind, it's like, we got this corporate structure stuff here, but then there's also like, I just get vibes and I'm like, I should call this person. Yeah, they're kind of on a list, but we got a couple lists going on, but sometimes you just call on instinct.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's almost like the equivalent of like going up and talking to a potential like romantic partnership, right? You got to treat the individual like a person, and it's really, that's how simple it is, right? You just got to treat the individual like a person, and as soon as they mention that they have some motivation, I think that's a big people don't understand the difference between like sales and marketing.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like specifically on the phones, because what if I could tell you that like realistically cold calling in its own form is marketing? And my mindset around that specifically is every person you talk to is just a person. If they're not interested in your product, you're essentially marketing your name out and you're going on to the next individual. You only make a sale once there's a little bit of motivation there, right? And I think that's a big like limiting belief, because at the end of the day, when you're making a sale, that individual needs us more than we need them. And that's been the biggest mindset shift that I believe that myself, in addition to the other individuals I'm in business with, have had.
Yeah. Really great point too. I actually recently had a follow up with a company. They will remain nameless, but I, for whatever reason, the email wasn't coming through. I was looking for a quote from someone, and it was something was happening tech wise, but I had to follow up with them several times, and I'm like, that should have been way better follow up, because I'm wanting the product and service. I guess it's kind of a mix of both. Like, don't be afraid to call people. Like sometimes they're wanting that to happen. Like had me like kind of totally forgot about that and been too busy, off my radar completely, and probably not calling them back to even follow up. I just trying to work with them. It's a local company on this end of things, trying to support that part of it. So, but they shouldn't be afraid to pick up the phone and follow up and make sure I got that email.
The amount of inquiries I've put online and I've never gotten a response back is unbelievable. The amount of money like I probably would have spent is like ridiculous, but here we are.
Yeah, it's like I'm waiting for that follow up on the other side, and like people who are busy or really focused on whatever their craft is, they need to be contacted and kind of being told, what's out there for them and stuff like that if they are, because they're interested, but life's weird and busy. And then that's why you got to work with experts no matter what it is, right? It's talking with I don't even know what meeting recently with the financial planner human in my life. Great call. We do like a quarterly update or half a year, whatever it is, for like going through stuff. And yeah, like we don't have that meeting, falls off the radar, then you're not hitting your goals and giving updates for different things, because life changes quick too, right? I mean, what are reasons that people are buying or selling? It's because like life changes. I mean, you go way deeper on this one, but things are happening, right? It's changes, and those things happen frequently. So they're in a situation where they do need help, and it usually catches people by surprise if they have to sell or want to buy, I
Yeah.
guess. So,
Well, there's that saying, right? There's death, divorce, and taxes, or not, sorry, death, divorce, deployment are 3 reasons that people need to move, right? So
yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's the reality of it, right? People are downsizing, upsizing, loss of life. Unfortunately, it's part of the journey. We're not making it out of here alive. And yeah, it's just always going to be part of the business. So on the real estate side, definitely got to be following up on, how's everyone doing? has a whole new term maybe, right? On that end, but it's, yeah. So what's the hottest area right now in the real estate market? Are you, I don't know, maybe it's a weird thing to ask, but I know that you can.
I was gonna say there's North America is pretty huge.
Well, like in terms of, I guess, like trend, I mean, we see lots of stuff on like new, like no one's gonna be able to buy a house, whatever. And I call BS all day long on a lot of that, because I look at stuff and I'm like, no, there's lots of options. Like,
I
but
don't know. I was told by an agent, like in a Canadian office, not to buy in Canada. So I don't know. I think that might. It was a top 1% agent who I know grosses over $1 million a year telling me not to buy in Canada if I'm going to invest anywhere. So, I think, I don't know. I'm not the person to ask specifically from a perspective of investing, because I don't have enough investing experience to give anybody advice on that. But I've heard like a lot of my like counterparts and coworkers are investing in very boring areas, like Corn County specifically, and like out in the States. So cash flow perspective, that's what I've been hearing. I have not done anything specifically, so I'm not going to give you any more insight on that. But
no, that's okay. Yeah, I mean, it's good to just poke that thing, see what's going on there. So you focus now, I guess, outside the kind of like maybe shifting a little bit towards the sales side, and we're talking about like all these touch points and things. Like, what's the process that you start on when you're meeting folks that need some help in the space? How are you often finding folks? Are they in a position where they're kind of reaching out, or is it you're finding them in kind of like a pinch and they're like, hey, like I'm too stressed, but I got to do better in this area? What's the evolution of your discussion with folks and your business?
Well, there's that saying, and there's 4 different laws of lead generation, and I actually just made a more in-depth YouTube video on this. But the first law of lead generation is to build a database. So typically the database is the lifeline and bloodline of an individual's business. So what I did typically when I left the real estate brokerage, I had a pretty big network of realtors, of broker owners, and just other individuals in the real estate ecosystem. And from there, obviously, the second law of lead generation is feed that database daily, continue to grow that database by, lead generation. But the third thing is, provide value to that database. So when I talk to my agents or broker owners, or even the mortgage or loan officers, on how that they should be nurturing their database and how they should be talking to their database over 100 times per year, why would that be any different from myself? So it's the exact same thing. The only difference is now that I have, like, I'm at 13 full-time clients that I'm consulting. All I'm doing is I'm literally getting wins from every single one of those individuals. Obviously I'm consulting those individuals up for 30 minutes a week. That's typically the average time that I spend with them. The rest of the time is just accountability and seeing what their wins and losses have been and how we can progress. But specifically looking at those individuals, how easy is it from a marketing standpoint for me to email Steven or John Smith and say, hey, I know you mentioned that your pain point in your business is lead generation. Look what David Siena was able to do in 30 minutes with me. For example, and a real life example is, Luis Carmona is an individual broker owner in Los Angeles. He booked 5 appointments today from cold calling. His very first time cold calling. That's just an example. Like, how much of an easy email is it if I were to email my database knowing that their pain point is lead generation, for example? it's not about shoving the product down an individual's throat. It's just
Right.
providing a little bit of value. And I think that that's really what I've done personally. And I've only been doing it for full time for 23 days. So, to get to 13 full time clients, though, obviously,
Yeah.
it's exciting.
That's all. And it's something that I want to like kind of unpack. I know you just said kind of like an email, and it's something that I see in my inbox, and I'm sure other business owners see this too. Because I just got a message on LinkedIn, and it was an interesting situation, but I think you just kind of covered it on your own there about leaning into folks that have had experiences with you. Because I get these cold messages, and it just seems so. I never realized how relationship based I really was. And I
Mhm.
didn't wanna I hate not replying. So ultimately, this guy messaged me, he's like, "Hey, do you have a problem with lead generation?" Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like and then he was like, "Do you know anyone that does?" Because I said, "Hey, no, I'm like, we're okay." Um, Kinda blew him off, right? But and then he's like, "Well, you gotta refer me someone." And I'm like, "Man, I don't know you. I would not refer you if I don't know what that business is like. That's bad business. I don't know what you're gonna how this is gonna go. But if you have that, like, what you were saying, like creating that network, showing value, getting folks to refer you. It would be totally different if someone I was talking with was like, "Hey, you got to talk to," I don't even remember the guy's name because I was kind of annoyed by it, but let's call him Bob.
He's
Bob
not,
about
he's not, he's not taking enough massive action, is what I'm hearing.
yes, exactly. Well, and it was just like that's how I kind of am, like, but that's I think the benefit of the phone call, and it seems almost I think strange to talk about it at this level, but I think it's needed to be said multiple times on the chat today because a phone call is very different than a cold email, and it can be part of the process, but depends how it's been done, right? And people still want to hear a voice; they still want to know, you're there with them on part of the journey, right? It's like that's still going to be a personal touch because there's no tone on an email. You don't know what's being, how that's coming off. Maybe they read it differently, however that may be. So,
Well,
um,
I read this I think I actually read this in The Way of the Wolf. So I have a bunch of books on my desk here, but
good, good.
specifically in that book, it mentioned, and I was laughing at it. And one of the quotes from that book was, if anybody tries to sell you on why you should never be picking up the phone, it's essentially the same as what's it called, snake poison, when people typically
Snake oil.
snake oil. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
thank you for clarifying that, but it literally said the exact same thing. Where if people are trying to get you away from the phones and
yeah.
trying to sell you a product on how to get away from that, then you should probably not look at that product. So
Interesting. Okay, I'm so glad you grabbed the book from the side of there. I had this on my list earlier when I was looking forward to this episode today to talk to you about your reading and how much time you spend doing that. Now, I don't know, I'm not sure if that pattern is still really strong for you. I remember when we were chatting back in the KW days there, but what's your routine as far as reading goes?
yeah, I'm reading about 2 books a week right now. So it's yeah, so it's pretty steep. I think that truthfully though,
Yeah,
getting into consulting full time has really motivated me to read even more than I was before, just because I think that like I'm almost paid to think. Right. So
yeah,
obviously, and that's kind
totally.
of one of the biggest things is like there's really 2 books that I have on my desk right now that I'm constantly looking at and overviewing. And one's like Unlimited Power by Tony Robbins. And it
Okay,
is like it's a lot of NLP, it's a lot of reframing, it's a lot of like mindset.
right.
Um and really, I think that that's super important in like sales and business specifically, is to have that reframing mindset. And the other book is, and I know we've talked about this book probably 4 years ago, is like
Yeah,
Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blount. And
neat.
yeah, I don't know. I'm reading, but then again, I'm also reading like at least those are books that I'm constantly like looking at throughout the course of the day or throughout the course of the week. But I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, my reading pattern right now is probably like 1.5 to 2 books per week.
that's awesome, man. That's
Yeah.
huge. I didn't expect anything less, but I was curious to know what the update on that was.
I actually created a list of I think the top 50 books I've read so far this year. So definitely I can send that out to you if you want.
Yeah.
It's a sexy list. Like it's a pretty good list. So that's pretty good.
I love it. I recently, I don't know if I was on an episode that I had or if I was, I don't know where this came from. Maybe just a meeting, but I was at an event locally. This is where this, thank you, brain, for waking up. But they were giving examples actually of books and the fact that in different parts of the world they have different covers. You know how they say like don't judge a book by the cover, and like same with movies. Often
Interesting.
there'll be actually two different versions, whether it be in North America or if it's being produced in Europe. There's actually a different angle that they go to market with, which I thought was really it's almost the ultimate A and B testing.
Yeah.
But yeah, super weird. Because if you're traveling through airports, you see the same book, but different looking covers. You may purchase it because of the look, so they're willing to take the risk on that. It was, I don't know, random thing, but what this year so far, and I know this is a big ask and a question here, but the books that you have read on this list of 50, what's been kind of like a top of mind takeaway? It doesn't have to be a favorite, but something that sticks out for you, off that list of things. It doesn't have to be related to anything really, but
That's such a massive question. That's a massive ask.
you can have a top three.
I,
Kind of,
I think because I've read so many different like types of like even biographies, and I want to say the one thing that's because if you were to read the same book that I read, I think we'd have two different takeaways depending on
yes,
the book specifically. I think that the biggest ones that I've been like looking at or at least getting out of it has been, and you've heard this before, but obviously talking about and not to butcher this quote at all, but obviously the journey is more
yeah,
important than the destination. I think that that's been a very like big item that I've that I've been getting out of some of these books that I've been reading just through the biographies specifically. There's also been, and I actually wrote this down as well because I just had a coaching call with my coach, and one of the best quotes that we were talking about was the fact that there's no finish line. Success is the illusion of the destination. So there's no finish line. Success
yeah,
is the illusion of the destination. So I think that's one of the biggest takeaways I've personally seen, because I think that when you're in sales and you're not working a 9 to 5 and you're really just like you're rewarded for the income you produce, you're constantly looking at the top and the peak of every mountain. And as soon as you get to even halfway up the mountain, you're already looking at the next one. Right? That's
oh
something
yeah,
I'm sure you see the exact same thing where it's like, okay, our goal is to make 5K a month at first. And then eventually you get there and then it's like, okay, how am I going to get to 20? Like automatically you're like, how am I going to quadruple that?
right.
Then you get there and it's like, you're just
Yeah,
constantly, it just never ends. And I think that's something that I was reflecting on today, actually, in my coaching call, being like, am I, like my relationships have definitely like have been like a roller coaster throughout leaving the 9 to 5. What am I doing to enjoy the process a little bit more? Has definitely been something that's been a key takeaway for me this year.
very awesome. I love that a
It's
lot.
it's
I
it's
had
interesting, right? Like it's and
yeah,
a lot of people don't,
no,
a lot of people don't like recognize that, and that was me specifically too, where I'm like, I'm pretty close with my friends and my family, but I'm like, did I actually like throughout the past 4 or 5 years of working like a dog and building this out, did I enjoy it as much as I could have? Probably not,
yeah.
but that's okay.
It's a tough thing to balance. It's
Hey,
definitely
we're young still, right? We're young, which means that we're able to now enjoy it after we learn, right?
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, time on the rise. And I think it's yeah, it's very interesting to look at it that way. And like the long game too, looking further out, the work that you're doing now is hopefully going to reap benefits in the future, but enjoying it all the way along, right, is ultimately the point there. And
Mhm.
something outside of maybe more of a personal thing. I know it's a shared interest in is the fitness side of things. How important is it for you to take care of you in the journey?
It's funny you say that too, or you ask that question, because I think that like I love the aesthetic side of it first and foremost. Like I'm not gonna say like I love the aesthetic side of it. I love looking good,
Yeah,
and I think one of the I don't know if it was like Wayne Gretzky that said this. I might be butchering this quote, but there's that saying where like if you look good, you feel good. If you feel good, you play good. If you play good, they pay good. So I've always loved the aesthetic side of things, and I might offend a ton of people right now, but it's like I wouldn't
no,
get into business with me unless I look good, or unless I was like in shape. Like especially being a sales individual and a consultant, being a consultant, you want to be in business with somebody who's got every single, and it might sound very shallow. Like if you look at my social media, like it might look very shallow, but at the end of the day, if you don't want somebody, you don't want the overweight trainer training you on how to get fit at the gym. It's the same thing with your business or your consultant or somebody who's going to help you make more money.
right,
Naturally, you want to be in business with somebody who's got every area of their life already covered. So from a fitness perspective, that's the most important thing. But as I get a little bit older, like I'm only 27, but what I will say then again is like, feeling good is also like huge. It's more important than it was 5 years ago, because 5 years ago I always felt good. So now I know if I don't take ashwagandha, well, dude, it's true though. When you're 20, when you're 22, for example,
Yeah.
or 23 or whatever, like you always feel good. You can do whatever you want. You're gonna feel good.
Yes.
But now, if I don't go to bed at 9:30 p.m. and if I don't take my ashwagandha and my creatine and my fish oils, I'm gonna feel terrible. So I think that like it used to be
Yeah.
only aesthetics, and now it's like, okay, I actually need to like go to like I need to have that routine now, right?
No, man, well, wait till you get to like mid-30s creeping up my way, man. You feel it a little bit more.
Are we not like the same age?
I've got a few years on you. I guess I'm aging well, but I appreciate that.
The beard's covering up the rest of the face, right?
Yeah, like a little bit of baby face underneath here. If anything, hopefully it makes me look more my age. There's
Aging like wine, right?
yeah, hopefully. Yeah. No, I don't think it is being any way about it. It's there was actually a comparison to this. There was someone who I know works in like the, I guess we'll call it like the finance investing industry. And there was some study. This person does this full time. This is not financial advice, if we have to say that. But there was some study correlated to CEOs and folks leading companies who like lifted weights, basically in general. Like, can't remember the frequency, all the other stats that went along with it, but there was a weird correlation between positive growth in the company and which CEOs were taking care of themselves. And I was like, that seems very accurate. I'm not the same person if I don't go swim, bike, or lift weights, maybe run, whatever I'm doing that day, or hitting a sauna if I'm really reluctant. I can just go sit in the thing and sweat for a bit and at least feel some form of, cardio vibe in the day. And I don't know, you're functioning better, right?
It reminds me of that quote, and I don't know who came up
Love
with
it.
this quote, but there's a lot of quotes I know. I have a lot of quotes in this head. I have no idea who the
I
author
love
is,
it.
but how you act everywhere is how you act anywhere. Right. So if you're a slob in the gym, for example, or if you're a slob in your personal life, you're not going to be able to really take care of business when it comes down to it. Right. If you're brutal in your work, relationships, you're going to be an even worse partner. And I know people are going to argue that, but it's true. Like
Usually. Yeah,
you
usually you follow a pattern in like everything that you do. And I remember we did some work with a gentleman I had a relationship with for a long time in the workspace. It was like in the ag industry, and I came from there. We did some consulting later on. One of the things that he brought up, we were at a lunch meeting. He's like, you know you pretty well, Steve, but he's like, let me see the back of your truck. He wanted to see how like clean the vehicle was, basically, and he's like, okay. He's like, I did a hiring thing one time. I just wanted to check. I had an idea, and it was like pretty clear. I think I had like my gym bag because I'd come, from 4 in the morning to the meeting and blah blah blah. But basically, it was kind of a pulse check to be like, just want to know for sure,
Crazy.
And that was the interview part of the.
I wouldn't get the job.
Oh my god! But I was like, like everyone's got their little like thing that they want to check out, and there's different reasons, why you would or wouldn't maybe like hire different folks or work with them. And I think it's something to pay attention to, right? The attention to detail could be, nothing's perfect though, too, right? But it's the pattern and consistency over time. You reading a lot, you staying on top of fitness. That's going to lead to success down the road. Because if you do fumble, you're probably pretty quick to pick up that error.
If you fumble and you're already 100 feet in the sky, then
you're going.
If you fall a few feet, it's okay because you're still above everybody else, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm glad I asked. I'm glad we went down this path a little bit. I'm glad you mentioned that too.
I don't even know how we got through this path, but
yeah, I don't know. I'm guiding the ship here. Who put me in charge? There's what's coming up in the future for you, David? And what are I know you're a big goal guy. If you want to share, that's where I was going to poke next. Is like what's going on? It doesn't have to be a specific number if we don't want to go that way. But what's that look like?
I mean, tell me more. Let me reverse the question on you. What are you looking to find out? What are we able to get
if there was like certain, how many folks you're looking to have like an impact on in the next year, there's some goals there, or are you working outside of like the work to raise funds somewhere? I don't know, some kind of community thing that you're involved in, fitness goals, stuff like that. Like what is the holistic, mindset for someone like yourself look like? I think it's interesting to ask that.
I think the first, and I was talking to my coach about this really recently, as we get ready for 2025. And one of the things I really loved about the Keller Williams ecosystem was that, there's gross a million, net a million, and then once you net a million, give a million. I think that's like the biggest thing that attracted me to KW is always that mindset and how can we build up to there specifically.
Right.
And I think that you can't just do every single thing all at once. I think you almost got to do like obviously have that consistent around those different areas of life. For example, I'm like personally, and this is something I've been very active on social media about. Like I like want to fight hunger. That's like definitely something that's pretty big motivator for me from a donating perspective and that like standpoint specifically.
Yeah.
But I think obviously you could like money's only good, but the good you can do with it. But then again,
Yeah.
you also need to make money. Like you also need to make a lot of money in order to do a lot of good. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously I got my very, very specific goals on, income in different levels. I know that right now, my biggest thing is, I'm at 13 full-time clients right now. How can I get to 20 by the end of the year? That's realistically and success is very boring. As you know, like it's very, very boring. So that's been my big thing for the past 23 days is what do we need to do in order to get, from 13 to 20 as fast as possible, bigger, better, faster, and more fun. And that's, obviously I got those bigger goals. And, but I mean, right now specifically, it's how can I, because then I figure too, every single market center or brokerage I'm in business with, that's directly impacting, at least I think my smallest brokerage I'm in business with has around 200 agents. That's still impacting 200 lives. And obviously,
Right.
it's pretty, so so that's what I mean is I feel like that's been the most fulfilling aspect of it is, I can work with a lot of agents that are going to do a couple deals a month and help out a couple families a month. But really what I'm seeing a lot of value in is the amount of individuals that I'm getting into business with just in, in correlation to getting in business with one brokerage. That's kind of that's been where my mind's going specifically.
That's awesome. No, yeah, didn't mean to put you on any kind of spot with that one. Just I know
No, no,
that you
no,
have.
no. I was like, wow, this guy's trying to look inside my like bank account or something.
No, I
Where I'm
love.
like,
Yeah, no, something new for me, and I maybe I've seen this on some of your social. You're very active out there on, the hunger side of things. I think that's a great thing to share too. I know, if I'm a better human when I'm able to give back and have different goals and stuff. It's more fulfilling. We do a bit of charity work with a triathlon team that we do and stuff, and like then there's always other things to give back to, but you got to be functioning on the other side, making sure the business is being, so to say, fed as well, for success. And I think it's a great thing to talk about.
yeah, and I think maybe that's my new motto. Like, because before it was always, I'm battling, obscurity, mediocrity, and maybe I'll add hunger to the end of that.
Well,
That's
yeah, maybe.
the three now, because before it was just the two. It was battling obscurity and mediocrity. Maybe I'll add, hunger afterwards, and add something else where a percentage of the proceeds are donated. That's a great idea.
Oh, I'm glad to be here for the brainstorm. But no, I think it's yeah. I mean, a lot of high performing folks are very heavy in giving back, and it's interesting you mentioned that the million comment there. I think it's a great thing that you see over time, and maybe even a viewpoint from outside in, sometimes from the private sector business, that folks are like, oh, like they made it, whatever, like kind of grumpy about it. But it's like I think a lot of more folks are really actively giving back more often than is maybe perceived from the outside in, because they've taken care of themselves and they want to take care of others along the journey. And that's
It kind of reminds me of like the tax the rich conversation. Like when the people that are like financially literate understand that a billionaire gives away
yeah,
more than most millionaires will give away in their entire lives, like in 1 year,
yeah,
right? Like it's one of those conversations where, and that's not even me being like sounding silly. Like that's the legitimate, like a billionaire getting
yeah.
taxed at the same rate as a millionaire is still going to get taxed significantly more. So it's the same conversation almost, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's hopefully, yeah, going back and finding the right spots or what's, your passion. So
Yeah.
it's a great thing to have in the why, we'll call it, because I don't think there's just one part of the why. Ultimately, the more I kind of pick that apart for myself personally, it sounds like you too.
There's a
Um,
great book, Simon Sinek, Start With Why.
yeah, 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 very
Goodie.
good.
It's a goodie.
Yeah, yeah, very awesome. And how about what is next on the reading list on that side of things? Is there anything that you're looking at forward to, or have you read the entire library by the
You know
end of
what?
this year?
I'm gonna need to order some new books pretty soon. But I'm thinking right now, off the top of my head, I'm like right now I'm rereading The Art of the Deal by Trump actually, and that's like
Interesting.
that was really like that one. Like I read that a couple months ago, but I like really did a like listen to it with like 1.75 like speed on audio. So I ran through that book. I'm actually like reading it like paper copy right now.
Yeah,
Just inspired a little bit, but like that's a great question. I have a lot of like unread Tony Robbins books in my library right now that like I purchased earlier this year that I haven't even
yeah,
looked at. Mostly because every single Tony Robbins book, if you don't have
yeah.
any, they're like 600 pages long and the words are this small.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah,
Yeah,
so it's like that's why I haven't read them yet. Is I'm like,
totally.
yeah. Also,
No,
I
you.
just saw it's another one I'm excited for too. Actually, John Maxwell actually signed. I don't know if you saw. John Maxwell signed a copy of the 12 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. So I got a signed copy of that. I'm pretty excited to read. And John Maxwell is also like one of my favorite authors. So definitely excited to dig into that. Is there
Yeah.
any that you have on your bookshelf that I shouldn't be
I
aware
was.
of?
I don't know. I feel like I got a message just out of reach for me to like truly see it from here in the office. But there's a few. I don't. I got kind of hippie on some of mine. If I'm saying this in the right context, but like, what's it called? Ikagaya. It's like the Japanese word for kind of blending in what you love, what you like, what you're good at, and bringing that all together. I got a couple books on that stuff, just kind of being more at, I don't know, more in like the flow state of uh, things and being more cognizant of that, basically to kind of almost like soften that. But outside of, I guess, that kind of light recommendation, I don't know if I can read some of the other ones from here.
You
Just out
read
of,
have you read The Untethered Soul?
I don't think so. Okay. Number one recommendation right here, folks.
One of the best books I've read in a little while. Um,
Okay.
The Power of Now is pretty good. I'm just trying to think like recent ones that were like really, really good, like that, like mindset
Yeah,
wise.
yeah.
The Untethered Soul was really good. The Power of Now was really good. Don Miguel is like a super good author as well. I think he wrote The 5 Levels of Attachment. That was a super good book.
Ooh,
Yeah, there's a
yeah.
lot that are coming. You know what's a really good one too, actually, that I read earlier this year for like the 7th time was Surrounded by Idiots.
Oh, I saw you post about that. I do like that book. It's been
One
a
of
while since I read it.
So good. Like I
Yeah,
listened to that one and I
yeah.
was like, I couldn't put that, like I couldn't take my earphones out for that. It was phenomenal.
That's really cool. No, and it's always good, like you were saying too, to reread. It's over time, you're in different mindsets, whether it always be, like growth, all the stuff we're talking about, but just stage of life, different things happen, you change your lived experiences, and then you reread a book. And it's like, to your point too, that's kind of probably why back in the day, book clubs were kind of effective because you got to
Mhm.
hear how other people read that or, heard that thing being said, how it impacted them and, or, how they interpreted that. Because there's definitely a few ways to look at things. And we do not have the same experiences.
Well, yeah,
So
that's exactly it. Is like there's another quote, change the way you look at things and the things you look at change, right?
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's good.
Boom.
Next time we're just doing quotes. I'm gonna have a list. You're gonna have a list.
Listen, if you knew that beforehand, I would have had so many quotes written out for you.
Oh my gosh. No, I love the energy, David. And what now? Kind of closing off episode here. Kind of looking ahead. If folks want to reach out, talk to you about, your services, or just follow you on what's the best way,
Yeah,
social media. We'll include the links below. But
yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'm really active on social media, like my Instagram and my Facebook, and then I'm putting out a lot of it. I'm sure you've seen it already. I've been putting out a ton of free sales training actually on my YouTube channel. So I think it's been like 4 days and I have like 30 subscribers. So I'm pretty pumped about that. I don't know if
yeah,
that's good. That could be terrible. That could be also awesome. But
yeah,
I've been posting, like I've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into like coaching and training.
yeah.
And there's I was talking to one of my coaching clients about this the other week. The professionals know they need coaching. It's the amateurs who don't think they need any support or leverage. So I know I personally spent over like hundreds of thousands of dollars on my education. I know that not everybody can afford me, although I'm going to be pumping out a ton of free sales training.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's DM me on Instagram or go look at my training. Either way.
What are the handles called on there? Is it your name?
My name David Siena, and then my YouTube page is like Scale with Siena.
Scale Siena. Okay, awesome. We'll include that below here too. But if you're listening, go check those out. And yeah, it's been awesome having you on today. I'm looking forward to 2.0 of this down the road. I know it's going to happen.
I'm excited too. Maybe we'll link up in person next time.
Yes. Yeah, I like that. That sounds great.
Awesome.
Cool. Right on. Thanks, David.
Yeah, thank you.